is 11,826 miles, 30 hours. So, knackered. To be here in New Zealand, but now I'm really happy to be here in front of you and with so many people talking about the same thing. How will we live in the future without destroying a lot of what we would love? But I'd like to thank me in particular for making me come here as well, which I'm delighted to do. And a regular reminder by email that I was not fulfilling my obligation on timetables and things like that. But, so, I'm an architect by training, where I learned how to spend other people's money. It's a huge privilege to be an architect, and it's also, you can get carried away with that, because other people's money is easy to spend, your own is much harder. We then set up Modcell about 12 years ago now, and that was a construction company where I learned how to lose money. So we run a very successful loss-making business at the moment, at scale. And today, I'm a developer. I've recently just started a new role as chief exec of a development company in the UK, a sustainable development company called Connolly and Callahan. Martin Connolly is the investor in that. So I've transitioned all the way to the other end of the spectrum where hopefully we could maybe make some money and design places for people to be that are beautiful, affordable and sustainable. This was our first project for Velux, the roof window people. They're the only brand in construction that advertises on television. You don't put a roof window in your roof, you put a Velux, and I presume they also sell here in New Zealand. I'll buy a pint of your favourite tipple to anybody who can name another brand that the public can use day in, day out in that regard. So, at their corporate core, two words. Velux stands for ventilation and lux for light. And it's one of the means by which we can reduce energy consumption in buildings, because buildings simply create artificial nighttime. And so we have to heat them, we have to light them, and the number of designers who insist on designing buildings that can only ever use energy is still disappointingly high, and those who design glass multi-story towers are designing greenhouses without realising it, although it's not hard to work out what they're doing. But they then ask service engineers, mechanical and electrical engineers, to fix the problem, and the only way to fix that problem is to spend energy to cool or heat the building by a failure in design terms. So it's super insulated, 300 millimeters of insulation in the wall. This was designed in 1998. Glulam timber frame structure, clad in UK-grown cedar, not North American cedar, this is in the UK, and a building that really doesn't need the lights on most of the time and breathes by itself. So, 12 years ago we set up a Modcell and we build with carbon. And one of the things I'll be talking about today, and when we talk about passive house and carbon, is I think we need to recast our relationship to carbon. Today, you would describe carbon as public enemy number one, but we are all carbon, and without carbon, we don't exist. So I would like to recast the discussion about carbon to one of positive innovation, not negative dumping in our atmosphere. So we build with straw. And it's good to be an architect. Again, you spend quite portion of this. In the recession in 2013, the global value of construction on the planet was 2.9 trillion. So there's a lot of consultancy services we had over that. But at the same time, our built environment, through the heating, lighting and ventilation and whatever other energy-using systems we've been building, are responsible in developed economies for 45% of all man-made CO2. So coming here by plane, I felt really guilty. We're going to have to build some more low-carbon buildings to overcome that. But transport is only 18%. So if you're in construction, you are in the carbon emissions game. And it's a dirty job, but we can fix it. And then construction gets even worse. 60% of all materials by weight on the planet, all materials that mankind uses, is used in our built environment. 12% of more CO2 is emitted through the finding, transportation, and delivery of those materials to construction sites. 20% in the UK still end up in landfill. It's a dirty little secret of the construction industry. If I went to a job interview and said to a house builder, a house developer, and say if we do 100 houses, 20% of that will end up in landfill. And that doesn't account for theft, which is a well-established perk in the construction industry and should never be described as theft. So, buildings impact. If you ever go to an architect's house, it's full of samples. Badly assembled samples. So, buildings impact. Building has an effect on the environment, and other people say that. So, I'm very pleased if I show the first picture of a planet. Normally at eco-worry conferences, this is up fairly early. Mine rotates while I talk. I think we're coming around to New Zealand Ocean. It seemed to be in the dark. I'm really sorry about that. But okay, how many people have heard of One Planet Living? So some. One Planet Living was developed, so it's eco-footprinting by a better brand proposition, developed by Bioregional in the UK to describe in simple terms what we as humans require to live our life on the planet. We've been eco-footprinting since just before the oil crisis, when some economists got together and went, we're screwed, we're using too much resource. And what it says is if we take all the land that could be brought into use by humans for our own health, well-being and wealth creation, every man, woman and child on the planet would get 1.9 hectares of land. We generously give 2% of that available land back to every other species on the planet. That's the official gift from mankind to all other species on the planet. They get 2%. So we get the 90% of the habitable stuff. So 1.9 hectares of land, if we were equitable about land ownership, and almost nowhere is, every man, woman and child on the planet would have 1.9 hectares. That's quite nice. That's 100 metres by 190 metres. I don't know what that is in feet, but it's Linford Christie, I should take my sprinters, but who's the guy that does that? Exactly. Hussein does the short side in 9 seconds. So that's nice. How many people here own 1.9 hectares of land? I know this is New Zealand, there's probably more. Do that in the UK, it's only people wearing tweed with leather patches. So, land ownership in the UK is a bummer. Can't get hold of it. So, 1.9 hectares. There's an issue here as well. If I put that to 15 decimal places, it's counting down at 3 babies per second. So the resource take will get more challenging for us all as we go. And I don't say we should stop population growth, although it will be a challenge. That's balanced by 1.5 people per second shuffling off our mortal coil. And so it becomes a resource issue. And if we look at the financial crisis, what the banks did to us all, well, we are all participating in the environmental crisis, and we do it habitually day in and day out. So if you take that 1.9 hectares and ask how many hectares of land would a European require to live on, it's 6 hectares of land, or 3 planets worth of resource. And I think New Zealand will be something like 2.5. So you're living a good life out here, I've observed, but you're still consuming a lot. Apologies to the Americans in the audience, who about 4 or 5 years ago went from 5 to 6 planets worth of resource. And in that, it's not to be rude to Americans at all. And certainly not in a conference with a number of them in Europe. And it gets a bit more unkind, but I'll leave it where we are at the moment. But if you look at European and American lifestyle, you would not say that the American way of life is twice as good as European. So we have it within our own economic ability to say, well, maybe we could halve that. But if I'm a sub-Saharan African, I'm living on a quarter of the planet worth of resource. So the balance is absolutely only made up by 60% the world's population living in developing economies. So we're going to have to rebalance, and it means we're going to have to consume less and do less and fly less. Let's go to the UK, because we're not that much better than the Americans. But we discovered gas, natural gas. That's a great brand. Natural gas. Got to be good for you, natural gas. It still produces CO2. And the UK was self-sufficient in gas supply in 2004. So we didn't need to import any. By 2020, we will have to import 80% of our gas needs. Where are we going to get it from? So that's our national gas fame. We're going to get it from this man. Anybody know him? I've been showing this slide for about 10 years now, and you know, he's unkind to journalists. He can get shot if you say the wrong thing. He's also turned off the gas supply 5 to 6 times in Europe already in order to dampen down supply to make sure prices stay high when he's negotiating with his near neighbours. And in 2008, he switched off long enough to get the pressure to drop so low that the southern industrial complex had to shut down for 3 days at risk of blowback. Because the pressure was low, the flames would have gone back up the pipe. So, our gas supply is safe in this man's hand. And remember, the UK isn't the end of the pipe, Ireland is the end of the pipe. Northern Ireland doesn't even have gas, it runs on oil. So, where does the other 40% come from? Middle East. We're going to get mates rates from Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, North African producing countries because of our wonderful outreach program started by our President Tony Blair. So, we're screwed again. So, anybody know what NISM stands for? It's a new word in the UK, and even people in the UK probably won't know what NISM stands for. Okay, so NISM. It stands for Notification of Insufficient System Margin. Only the Brits could come up with that. But what it means, in October last year, our national grid, the pride of a developed nation, made an announcement that we had insufficient capacity to keep the lights on. And then, the following week, they then had to pay industry to shut down operations. And then they had to pay 400 times the buy rate for a kilowatt of renewable energy from 4 companies in the UK, just to keep the lights on. So we are the first industrialised nation on the planet going into energy failure. So, a rather romantic picture of a blackout during the war. I remember those in the 70s, through the coal strike. I remember living by candlelight on something called the 3-day week, when Britain shut down its energy consumption in order to keep itself going. And we will see brownouts of supply in the UK. So, I'll get onto straw in a minute. But it's always good to point out some of this. So, carbon, the natural carbon cycle. There are 5 carbon sinks on the planet. Atmosphere turns out to be a great place to store carbon. As it's a bit like feathers in your duvet, it raises the carbon value of our atmosphere, and we get too many feathers, you get too hot. So that's not good. Put it into the ocean, you get acidification, unless you're Danish and like pickled herring. That's not really a future for our oceans. Then we have geological carbon sinking. So that's limestone being produced now in the Bahamas, for example. Little phytoplankton absorbing CO2 out of the atmosphere as calcium carbonate. Teeth. That one isn't calcium carbonate, that's the false one, but this one is. And so that's geological carbon sinking. And then we've got soils and biosphere. The nature of the discussion here is about soil and biosphere. And so we're in the living part of the biosphere. We'll end up in the non-living part of it, all of us. So we will end up with biomass. And my proposition is that we need to create a 6th carbon sink, and it should be our built environment. We should capture and store carbon in our built environment. I'll talk more about that in my other talk. So we work with photosynthetic ingredients. That's pretty cool. So we decided that we would do that. So I've done this presentation at Equabil, where somebody came up and said, so what is the mix rate of lime juice in render? It just makes for a nicer PowerPoint presentation. Just to reassure you, the only thing I know to do with lime is to mix it with gin. So what we have is 40-year carbon capture, biannual carbon capture, and 160-million-year-old carbon capture. So those are our carbon ingredients. And then our whole world was not were these materials good, was destroy good performance in terms of insulation, all of that was a given. But rather struggled with the idea that it could only ever happen one house at a time. And that if the challenge is to decarbonize or make our way of building our homes more sustainable, then we needed to be able to do that at enormous scale to simply reduce the impact of everything else that happens in construction. So we ripped off very simple old good innovations require you to copy somebody else's. And we looked at IKEA, a prefabricated system of furniture manufacture, and said, could we not do flat pack component manufacture with straw? And so we worked with glue laminated timber beams to effectively reverse the Nebraskan method of putting a window in the wall, which is to you build your straw wall, you put a sleeve of timber into which you put your window. All we did was do a 180 on that, so the whole wall should be within the timber frame, and then we fill it up with straw, and then windows are the absence of straw, and then we frame it in. So that's a panel made out of 40-year-old carbon capture and annualized carbon capture. And we had no money. The road to hell, or insolvency at least, is paved with prefabrication innovation. Trust me, I know, I have the scars to show this. But the designers are always really clever. They go, oh, we can design a prefab system. Yeah, it's really cool. But you need somebody's money, again, to make that happen. And so it was really good that we had the money because we developed a system called flying factories. Today, you call that a pop-up factory. It uses Japanese just-in-time manufacture, where the IKEA components arrive in a farmer's barn. We source the straw locally. You can see it's a farmer's barn. There's a John Deere combine harvester in the back. There's some lime, there's some straw. And so we only manufacture the building near the site for the duration of the site, and then we shut down operations. So we don't have annualized overheads, we have project overheads. And that's a simpler, more economic way of doing prefabrication. And so there are those big components. This is for an office building, so they're very large. And so these guys are construction guys who work locally. We have one guy to set up a factory, and we can have up to 40 people working in a factory, depending on the size of the project. And then they come together and they do an IKEA assembly. And I can tell you, I built these things, and they're easier than an IKEA cupboard. We only have screws and bolts, a hedge trimmer, and a persuader. Most of you know what persuader means. That's the big rubber mat. So we're able to do straw block construction in the dry, on a farm. The toilets are reasonably clean. Not all farmers are delightful about their sanitation hygiene, but you know, there's an office nearby and stuff like that. So we can do everything you can do on site, but off site, and we do it near site. And there are all of those components sort of assembled together, and then we were able to do this. We do Amish barn raising in a barn. We borrow a barn from a farmer, and these are 13 70-year-old women from a girls' school in Bath that we built, and they spent a week in our flying factory making their own building. And if any one of those ever decides to get into construction, design, engineering, or whatever, logistics, we've done a pretty good job at the same time as building straw belt panels. Historically, we started with lime render, and we spray apply. There's no chicken wire or anything on this. We spray apply lime render directly onto the face of the straw, and we get a very good key, and then we rely on less metal in it. And so lime render is great. It's 160 million-year-old carbon, and uses half the energy than Portland cement. So there's this kind of interesting journey that lime is okay, but Portland cement isn't. And I don't know where the boundary line currently sits, because it's the same stuff, just heated to double the temperature of lime. So we will need to just work out where our boundaries actually are. Because if you want to go low carbon, don't use lime. lime. If you want to go really low carbon, use clay and adobes. So this is what the system looked like in 2007, 2008, when we were planning to build the project I'm about to show you, which is effectively a glue lamp frame slotted down over a sole plate and then the straw bale. So from inside to outside, it's 30 millimetre of lime render with a lime plaster on it, and then 30 millimetres of lime render wire cone back to give it a rough surface. This is what it looked like in plan. Anybody doing passive house or thermal bridging or leaking through the thermal bridge? I'll talk about how we made a passive house on Monday, but it's pretty good. The U value through 480 millimetres of timber is still compliant under the building regulations in the UK. So, for the moment. So, here's the Bell House at Bath. We got involved in research with Professor Pete Walker at Bath University, and this is us building the house on site. So the sole plate goes down, and then the panels come in. These are all render coat doors. That's when we use something called cross-laminated timber for the floor decks and the stairwell. Then day 2, the top panels go on. So we've even got windows built into those, and by lunchtime Wednesday, without a pump. So in 2008, we could build a 3-bedroom house in 2.5 days. Today, we build 2 houses a day using the same system. We've just got very fast. And then prefabrication, this looked like a prefabricated building. The aesthetic, so architecture, speak now, the aesthetic form follows function, it looks like a panel. And so it goes slow while all the electricians do their stuff inside. But it ended up looking like it. So every panel in that building is identical to its neighbour. And we basically have a 3-bale panel filled up 100% with straw. Well, you can see the tall thin window we call a 1-bale window. And then the big window at the top is a 3-bale panel with no straw in it. So it's a 3-bale window. And so the aesthetic is completely driven by the way you build it. Now that's Marmite for some people. Some people think it's very cool and modern. Others think it looks like a prefab house and don't want to be anywhere near it. So, but we're talking about carbon. So how much carbon? If I could get all the carbon to hang out in 1 cubic volume and colour themselves blue, that's the amount of CO2 no longer in the atmosphere, but scrubbed out of the air through photosynthesis by plant material, by phytoplankton 160 million years ago, by trees 40 years ago, by straw the year before, and that's 34 tonnes of CO2 in that building. Today, we've got that up to 54 tonnes captures carbon per house. That's 45 years of a 2 kilowatt domestic array, which is actually 15 years longer than its service life. And I have to wait 45 years for it to do all that offsetting. So we are banking carbon. And then it's a research project. So we researched it to hell. It's got 170 sensors in it. Inside the walls at 3 positions, so we're measuring outside humidity, temperature, moisture content, 3 points through the wall, and then inside exactly the same measures. We've been measuring that now for 2008 to today. That's quite a long time. Every 15 minutes, all the data goes over to America. It's enormous Excel files. They scrape the data and send it back and say, it works. And basically, everything we've been talking about is this building is made up of formerly living material that still does what it did when it was alive. It breathes. It can absorb and desorb moisture. It can not become a complete barrier between us as humans, sensual beings, and when I mean sensual, I don't mean in the erotic sense, but that's fine too. I mean in terms of you are breathing and transpiring moisture right now. And I was 26 hours on a plane, and boy, did I need a lot of moisturiser when I got off that plane. It was 10% relative humidity on the plane. All the moisture was sucked out of my body. Still recovering, well, maybe it's a beer. But, and then we did air tightness tests, so it's classic air tightness test. There's the thermal modelling. We'll have a word with the window manufacturer. But we're rather pleased. That's looking through a co-heating test, 17 days of internal temperature maintained at 21 degrees C for 17 days, and then we're looking for thermal bridging, and it's the window frames that we're doing. So the glue lamp will bridge, but you the challenge now is glazing, not the walls. So we burnt it. We have to do tests, and Bruce King did the first part test on straw bales. Yesterday, Paul Jackman talked about the half-hour test. This is the 2 hours 45-minute test panel, where eventually they just said, sorry, you haven't paid for a 3-hour test, you have to stop. So, which we did, and because it was £10,000 test. So it performs. There's no doubt about that. But intuitively, everybody says, well, you're building out of fuel. But it's very simple. You have the triangle of configuration, which is fuel, oxygen, and heat. By densely packing the bales, you just work out the means by which the flame can get a regular supply of oxygen. So it just chars. It chars in the same way as timber chars, slightly faster, but it performs like heat. And then we did some analog stuff. So that's outside, that's a bale, that's inside. And what it's showing is that the temperature, we modeled this in advance, the temperature cycle between 10 degrees and 30 degrees on a daily cycle. And what you're seeing is how the heat translates through the wall. So, wait a minute, it'll pulse red, and you can see it goes, and then gives up. Because the sun has gone down 12 hours later, and then heat just wants to be back out. So what you have is a thermal flywheel. You have thermal mass type activity working in the straw bale wall, which again, when you talk to people who insist on using concrete for thermal mass in buildings, they say, can't be true. It simply can't be true. It's a super institute. Well, 15% moisture content of straw means that 15% of the weight of the wall is made of water, because that's what natural materials contain, and they absorb and desorb that. Water has 4 times the thermal mass of concrete. So what we have is a natural, systemic, dynamic model which is breathing backwards and forwards, and this building is just mediating on your behalf, and there are no switches. There is no maintenance, there are no filters, and other than occasional insects, it's all pretty good. And then, I don't know whether Paul was involved in this, but Bath University is an engineering department, so we did dynamic finite element analysis to see how it would perform, and then like all engineers, they like to break things, so we then built a siege engine on the side of the building, and put a ram into it and pushed it until it deflected, and it's good, it won't. And then, with that hydraulic ram, we then cycled it to get, we don't have a shake plate, but it passed its earthquake test. So, the outcome, turns out Big Bad Wolf is a blowhard. I hope that translates into every part of the world. You should have seen what the engineers were wearing when they did that test. It was literally, they had a wolf. Then we did life cycle analysis, because everybody says, okay, yes, it's a byproduct, it's made of good materials, but what about nitrates? What about all the other impacts that you have? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, something like 11 measures for life cycle analysis, which looks at all impacts, including whether it's good low carbon or not, energy efficient, but it looks at something called eutrophication, which if you want to find out about eutrophication, in the exhibition next door, there is a cow pissing regularly on the floor, releasing nitrates into the watercourse, and that eutrophication is a posh word for what that cow is doing. It's getting nitrates into our watercourses and causing algal bloom. So and we compared it to the traditional brick and block. So the blue is brick and block, and the bale house is straw. At the same time, we developed something called parametric modeling. This is for the architects of this big building information model. So the project I'm going to show you now is entirely designed in 3D. All of the panels, you just point at one of the panels and say, can I have a door on the left-hand side or a window on the right-hand side? And then it produced all of the cutting patterns, which we emailed over to Austria. And then that went into a great big Humdinger machine, which cuts. It's like the CNC machine we were talking about the other day, but really expensive. And then it all comes back to us, 3,000 sticks of timber. Only one was wrong, and that was because the pilot got it wrong. And then developed as an intentional community by the community themselves. And there'll be co-council for it shortly. So we then went on to build 20 dwellings, 6 one-bedroom apartments, 6 two-bedroom apartments, and then 3 and 4-bedroom houses. It's designed by White Design, built using Hotel, and well, actually, it was co-designed with the Lilac community and society. So that's what it looks like today. There's all the Bale House stuff. So the great thing about working as a community, their renewable energy is one single purchase for the whole of the site. The apartments can't use soil hot water because the water tanks are too big, but the community shares the benefit from all the solar photovoltaic across the whole of the community. And so you get all of that collected buying power, and aggregation of cost is shared by us all. The best bet financially on the planet is you and I. Don't bet on banks for the future. It's going to be microcredit, it's going to be crowdfunding, it's going to be you and me, and like Emily, asking for money for projects with our hands out. But we can do that collectively, and as I said yesterday, in the 19th century, some people in Yorkshire thought that would be a good idea. It was called a building society. That's where you put your money into a society, not a bank, a society, a cooperative structure, to actually enable others to use your money to build and pay you a little bit of interest for doing that. That seems like a nice way to do banking. Of course, co-op bank, I don't know whether you saw what happened to us in the UK with the co-op bank. Chairman turns out to be a crack smoking, prostitute, dancing chairman. The co-op society. He didn't go to jail, but he certainly left the board. But anyway, we need to rethink how we're going to finance what we do. And these guys are showing the way, so it's all very nice. So co-housing, parking at the edge in order to create a shared space in which you can, children can run around and do all sorts of nice things. At the pond in the middle, it's brand new ponds, so it's covered in duckweed. Ponds take a little while to settle down. But they've got a deck. And some of the people came up to me after living there for a year and said, it's a bit like being on holiday all the time. It's a bit like being at something called a centre park. I don't really know that, but these are kind of glamping places in the UK and Europe where you go and have holidays in the woods. This is how they describe it. And then, of course, you know, it's all about the people. It's not about the straw. It's not about all of that. It's about people. And they burn stuff too. That's called a fire pit. I think that's essential in any co-housing group. The needs sit around singing songs, burning things. This seems to be part of our soul. And then there's Fran. She used to live on a houseboat, had very little money. And then one of the daughters, she was only about 4 when she moved in, and they have allotments. They kind of live a good life in Branley, in Leeds. And Branley in Leeds was not a #1 destination in the 1970s for living a good life. And here they are, a wonderfully diverse group of people. They're kind of almost horribly diverse in terms of they are ethnically diverse, they are age diverse, they are sexual preference diverse, and almost a particular slice of the UK that wants to live like this. And our challenge now is to have others want to do it too, and not just have it be a self-selected group, but something that people really want to do. And I have no objection to that at all. They're all really cool. But they are all the time. They would turn up to a conference like this. So the great thing is their quarterly winter heating bills, £20 for a 1-bedroom flat, £50 for a 4-bedroom house with children, 3 children in it. That's 90% less than the average for Leeds. Then their cost, I won't go through it all, but it's £101 a square foot. So basically it's 20%, 80% less than the market rate for Leeds, which was, I think, one of the definitions for affordability. All of these people are waged. There's not a social rental model. They're all waged. But the lowest income on the site is £15,000 a year. He's an actor. And then Paul is a university lecturer. He's on a pretty good rate, and his wife's a GP on really good money. But they developed a model called Mutual Home Ownership Society. It's a new economic foundation model. I don't have time to explain it all in detail, but you commit to a variety of obligations you will support the debt that was borrowed from Triodos Bank, the so-called ethical bank. There's no such thing as an ethical bank, but these are Dutch, slightly more ethical than most bankers. And they were willing to do this. But the rule for that Lila gave to themselves was that 35% of your net disposable income, no matter what you own, service the debt. And what they've done is they've unhooked a bank's view of your ability to service debt to a community's view of how it services debt. And basically, the way the out-of-work actor pays, he just takes longer. Whereas a bank wouldn't accept that. The bank would give you a term in which you would have to service the debt. So what they are doing is aggregating the means of the ability for them to support their own development. And it's a very interesting model. It's available, it's publicly open, and it's one of a variety of models. Let's just talk about flickering slides. Okay, so that is the house building program for the Okay, it's not good. The summary was it's not good. So it might just be a cable on this. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what happened. The war happened, so we stopped building houses. We came out of the war with the need to build 400,000 houses a year. And we did that by two means. Council housing, which is started before the war, and then what's the name, Barrett, the volume house builder, came along to the government and said that volume is the only way you can do this. So we scaled to building 350,000 houses a year in 1967. 1979, Margaret Thatcher came to power, and the little blue arrow is pointing at which the last council house in Britain was built, 1991, thank you, Margaret. And I'm now running out of steam. So, what shall I say about that? Right, so, we have a structural failure in our housing supply in the UK. We need to build 250,000 houses a year more than we're currently building just to meet demand. I will just move forward. I know what the slide says, so I'll tell you. And we can't do it. And we've got a problem in the UK, something called generation rent. That means if you're under the age of 35, you probably don't own a home, where 40% of the UK population would have owned a home by that time. We're building less than half the demand. Financial crisis, yes, I see. I do know what's in the slide, but it does not see it. And basically, generation rent is just going, okay, screw it, I'll just rent. That's okay. And they become an experiential generation. They're probably spending the money they would normally spend on coming to New Zealand and surfing and stuff like that. So we have a problem. Pensions, I don't know what your pension is performing like, but sadly, my generation is not going to be a baby boomer in retirement. It's going to be a rather sad, uncivil experience for most of us. So we may actually end up in poverty in one of the most developed economies in the world. That's our population will face this. So we've got a big problem. So government is panicking. It's always good to see a politician panic, because they actually start making decisions rather than doing ideology. So, strangely, 15,000 homes a year are built by self-builders in the UK. They are officially the largest building provider of homes in the UK. It's not very many of them. And it's quite difficult to scale self-building. A big part of this conference is about self-building, but it's normally an adventure for a family. It's normally a lifetime's work. It's an ambition, and it's only crazy people that do it more than once. Because if you look at divorce rates among self-builders, it's twice the national average. I know, I've been involved with a divorce. That's really difficult as a client, where you're planning for a family, and before you finish the project, they are divorced. Because it's so stressful. We still get paid. So in Britain, we've got something called the Custom Build Programme. It's brand new, and it's going to deliver a vast number of houses, 100,000 by 2020 per year. And this is a comparison of developed economies around the world on self-building. So if you go to Austria, 84% of all housing in Austria is delivered by individuals or groups. 84%. And it's not, Austria's got 50 million people. It's not a small economy by any means. And then, you know, guess where the UK is? Where's New Zealand? Oh, you're not too good, actually. You're the third worst, if you want to look at it that way. Or you've got the most potential. That's the way we prefer to look at it. So the most potential is in the UK, followed by the Netherlands, and then New Zealand. So there's lots of money going into this. The affordable housing programme, £150 million loan fund. There's 400 million going into London. The rest of the UK gets 200, but that's fairly typical. London's like a black hole. Blah, 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 blah. But the new thing that comes on April the 1st is the House Development Fund, £2 billion. And housing developers cannot borrow from that fund. It can only be custom business. So, $250,000 new homes a year, that's a £50 billion housing market. So there's opportunity to be had if you look at it that way. Half of it will be custom built. It doesn't exist and it starts in April. The great thing is, we've got somebody called Kevin McLeod, you know him? A smooth guy on Channel 4, talks about houses a lot. So Kevin McLeod is part of government policy. He's been grooming people around the world to think about self-building. And so if you ask self-builders what do they want a light and airy home, well-designed, environmentally friendly and low energy. If you ask a house builder what they want what they get is the house builder's response. So 67% of the UK population would like to build its own home. That's an astonishing statistic, and that shows the lies of the volume house builders. So, two of those. We then did, out of the research, we got a QMAP certification, which means we can actually sell houses made of straw on the open market without meeting people who might buy them, because you can now get something called high street mortgages for straw bare buildings in the UK. This is our first one. We met with the planners. It's a 1930s council housing estate. They said, do whatever you like, as long as it looks like the 1930s council houses immediately adjacent. So this is a big fat straw bale wall with a cavity and brickwork on the outside. We were not allowed to do anything else, but I won't apologise any further, because I think it's absolutely fantastic. In a very ordinary street, in a former council estate in England, we sold the world's first open market straw bale building. Although I think Emily's doing something like that in America, but you put your claim in first. So it's super insulated, airtight, mechanical heat recovery, ventilation, air sources, pumps to heat it, all LED lighting, rainwater harvesting, plasterboard free, no plasterboard, we're using compressed straw board, which I'll talk about on Monday, and 2 kilowatt PV arrays, 1180 per square metre. We put them on the open market, we had 400 inquiries, they all sold on the morning of the open day, and we went to see the bids because the demand was so high. But the developer Martin, somebody actually bid £25,000 more than the asking price, so he crossed it out and put it down to the same average price that everybody else has done. So he's a developer with a difference. Also, there we are, we're being filmed, we're going on the telly. That's Belinda, she moved in, she'd lived in the council estate for 35 years, this was her first home, and she's now installed. And that's what we made it out of. That's a certified system. It's not Monsol line, it's basically a big wardrobe with straw in it. Straw in a box, basically. So to get it certified, we had to take away some of the innovation. There's something called a cavity, which is called a traditional construction in the UK, only invented in the 1930s, but it's called traditional. And unless you have a cavity, you can't get certified. So we have a 40mm cavity on the outside between the straw panel and the render. That's what it looks like in various build-ups. And you can see the compressed straw board on the inside, there's no plasterboard. So all the ceilings, walls, everything are all done in straw as well. Glueless straw. I'll talk about that. Then we're part of the custom build program. This is with Igloo Regeneration. We've just got planning permission for 54 houses down in Cornwall. Flying factories in Devon. That winds up with people from Cornwall because they don't like each other. 5 minutes. And then we're what's called a home manufacturer. There are another 4, and what you do is a bit like a Canadian and New Zealand and Australian model. The Igloo do the development up to the plots, then you come along and choose your home manufacturer. So people get I'd like a bale house type 2 with a renewable energy package type 3, deluxe kitchen and a red door, and it's proceed to checkout. But proceed to checkout. It's a 2-stage mortgage payment done by the whole store in the UK. Because we don't know what the development will look like until it's all built out. The planners freaked out at that. So it's all discharged. The technical term for complying with a planning approval is to discharge all the conditions. So it's all discharged through a design guide. So the planners do not know what the development will look like until it's finished. Here's our offer in Cornwall. It's 4 house types, 2 and 3 stories, pitched and terraced rooms. We don't call them flat roofs, we call them terraced. You can have a gin and tonic on a terrace. And the stairwell, as you can see, goes up to actually make the roof usable, whether that be for PVs or for growing something on the roof. And then you can dress it. So it's a bit like buying a car now. You go in and say, I'd like a base model, 3-story, I'd like it clad in tile hanging, which is a kind of Cornwall aesthetic. And then everything inside, other than the stair cores and the structural building regulation approved elements, are all customizable to your choice. That's the price. So the land in Cornwall is 45,000, and the house turnkey handover is 132. So that's higher than at Lilac, but the model is a split development model. So you've got 2 profit and overheads coming out. So our model is to do something a bit more different. So there's a 3-story house. There are some of the customizable options. That's what a street would look like if we could encourage people to buy our product rather than neighbours. So we have a simple vision. We're now a developer. We're going to create a people-centred development model where everyone can have access to a reasonably priced, affordable home. The key part for us now is to bring communities into it. We have something called localism in the UK. It's legislation, and it describes that the community now has rights where they would never have before. Localism sets up a triangle. Triangles are all really useful in terms of why you can't have what you want. Community at one end, local authorities and development. And so local authorities and communities, they kind of trust each other. Not always, but they kind of trust each other. Then, so that's quite nice. Then local authorities and developments, developers, no, don't like them. And then even worse, community and developers hate them. So we've got a real dysfunctional system now in this. But we need to get everything into the middle. So that's our job. We are a player in the middle of that triangle of distrust. And what do we do? So there's our house type. But fundamentally, this is all hardware. This is an analogy now. So it's hardware. And if I can be as rude to describe people as software, so more dynamic, more variable, fuzzy for a lot of people, the issue is we have no operating system for the delivery of communities almost anywhere in the world. It's either missing, it's confused, not defined, or way too slow. There are dedicated people who are prepared to haul ass for years to make this work. So we're working with the founder of Lilac, Paul Chatterton, to create a red book, a toolkit for community-led development. And our developer-led model uses Form for the Future Park capitals, manufacture capital and financial capital. That's where everybody thinks it's all at. But we will measure social capital and human capital all within a subset of natural capital. And all of our development choices are based around each of those receiving an appropriate score at plus 7% on our matrix of measurement. So we're saying environments, but there is nothing other than the environment. Everything else is a subset of it. That's where we can do things. And then there's the small blue bit in the middle. We need to tell the banks we will make some money out of this. So we will do that. So here's our development where we're doing it. At the centre is a common house or a community hub building. We'll do that for free. We do that in all of our developments. Here's one in Frome, the Independency of Frome, a former carpet factory. We own that part of the site there. We've just taken that down. Okay, pictures of the sun. Okay. sun does rotate around through all of those things. The sun generally blows from that side in the UK. There's the entrance. It's a bit noisy there. And so our response is to do a layout map. And the little orange building is the community hub. I'm going very fast. If we zoom in a bit on that. Oh, and then we've got this bit. Watch that bit later. That's a 140-metre long warehouse door. So there we are. There's the layout. We are actually doing this as site-led co-housing. We are inviting people, should they choose, to come and work with us to form a co-housing unit. What we can't do is co-housing, we'll do is custom build, and we can't do is custom build, we will build and sell anyway. So if all we're doing is selling straw-bound homes, reasonably priced, super insulated, low carbon, it's a dirty developer job, but we will do it. There's the co-housing layout. So split level. Let's get to the more interesting bit. So those are some of the houses for the co-housing group. And this, the building on the left, is this 140-metre long building. So here's some co-houses in there. In my head, they're retired because they don't need a loft. They've got rid of everything. And then as they move through, you can see the electric smart car, carpooling, etc. The community hub is enormous. It's 3 stories high, largest classes, etc. But we are taking the lease of the warehouse next door on behalf of the community. We will refurbish it and turn it into whatever the community chooses to use it for. A makery, a bakery, an artery, whatever it might be. That's what the houses look like. I'm getting